This lecture covers the Cult of True Womanhood reading by Barbara Welters and is part one of a two-part series on women and ideas of womanhood in 19th century America. Let's begin with a quick review. We have talked previously about the origins of the two-sex, two-gender system. As we learned, during this period in Western history, sex and gender were considered the very foundation of all social categorizations and were based on a very specific binary, male and female, with the male pole being superior and the female inferior. Personality and behavior traits were divided into male-female or masculine-feminine characteristics. As Mary Wollstonecraft argues in her essay, The Vindication of the Rights of Women, men were understood to be strong, rational, and virtuous, while women were often believed to be weak, sensitive, irrational, and innocent. At the same time, they were prone to vice. Let's look at a slight twist in this understanding in the Cult of True Womanhood in America in the early 19th century. 19th century America was abuzz with activity. Commerce, industrialization, the building of railroads, and the consolidation of a capitalistic and material culture. While there was much celebration of American modernity, there was also a sense of loss for older ways of life and an underlying concern that with the rise of materialism would come the fall of traditional ways of life. In particular, the increasing instability or change in trends, values, and fortunes made for a very exciting culture, but one that created deep anxiety. One solution was the projection of the so-called old values, stability, Christian morality, cultural traditions, etc., onto middle-class women. Middle-class white women, in what was called the Cult of True Womanhood, became a hostage of culture and morality, the upholder of the past. In the home, while her husband went out to make his fortunes in the chaotic world of modern America. Men were the movers, the doers, the actors. Women were the passive conduits of morality and tradition. The true woman had four cardinal virtues: piety, purity, submissiveness, and domesticity. Young girls were instructed that without all four, nothing else in life had meaning, and with all four, life would be full of happiness and even a type of power. Let's start with number one, piety. Piety, the quality of being religious or reverent, was understood to be the source of women's strength. Religion, in opposition to the modern sphere of science, was believed to be naturally fit for women. Women's role in society was to be a better Eve, working to redeem society from the ills and sins of growing industrialism and materialism. Women's suffering was seen as their natural state, one that made them the perfect conduits for salvation. In other words, if religion exhorted one to suffer for their salvation, then women were the perfect subjects of religion and could suffer collectively for society as a whole. Furthermore, the religious sphere was perceived as safe for women. It was an extension of the proper sphere for women, the home. In church work, women were allowed activity without threat to their domesticity or purity. As Barbara Welters writes, quote, cultural critics spoke rather of religion as a kind of tranquilizer for the many undefined longings which swept even the most pious young girl, and about which it was better to pray than think. Purity, or more straightforwardly, virginity, was very closely aligned with piety. Girls were taught very early that their virginity was the most valuable trait. Boys and men were more aligned to nature, the body, and the animal. Thus, they could not control their lusts and desires. Their job was to resist male advances until the wedding night, when their job now became to be sexually available to their husbands. If you've watched Bridgerton, you know this story very well. Daphne Bridgerton was given absolutely no information about sex or sexuality before she wed the Duke. She finds that her lack of knowledge is so profound that she does not know how babies are made, nor that her husband's penchant for pulling out is because he doesn't want children. Girls who remained virgins until their wedding night were put on pedestals, but girls who didn't were seen as the very embodiment of depravity. Stories abounded of young women who quote unquote gave in to male pressure and then went mad, like Crazy Lucy. The only form of power a woman wielded was resisting the man who wanted her. As Welter writes, quote, if a woman managed to withstand man's assaults on her virtue, she demonstrated her superiority and her power over him.
You chose to lie to me.
I did not lie. I thought you were prepared. I thought you understood how a child came to be.
You took my future from me.
Welter tells us that submission was perhaps the most feminine virtue expected of women. If men were the actors in this world, women were the passive responders to men's actions. Maintaining the patriarchal hierarchy of religion and older political forms like the monarchy, men were the patriarchs of their own home, even as they were in an egalitarian relationship in the public sphere with other landed white men. Girls and women were told that they were naturally more obedient and submissive, pliable of temper and humble. They must properly look to man for protection. Quote, she is in a measure dependent. She asks for wisdom, constancy, firmness, perseverance, and she is willing to repay it all by the surrender of the full treasure of her affections. Woman despises in man everything like herself, except a tender heart. It is enough she is effeminate and weak. She doesn't want another like herself, declared one George Burnap in his lectures on the spheres and duties of woman. Interestingly, there was also the sense that women might know better, being closer to religion, but that it behooved domestic peace to let their husbands think he is always getting the upper hand. The sphere in which all of this piety, purity, and submissiveness was exercised was the domestic or private sphere. In order to fully understand this, we need to briefly discuss what feminist thinkers call the separation of spheres, the division of social space based on the two-sex, two-gender system into public and private. The public sphere, the sphere of business, of manufacturing, of government, and of politics, was believed to be properly inhabited by men. Alternatively, women were believed to properly inhabit the domestic or private sphere, the sphere inside the home, of family, child-rearing, decor, sustenance, and the passing down of religious and cultural norms. And in keeping with the hierarchical structure of this binary, the public sphere was more important than the private, and men, while characterized often as ill at ease in the domestic sphere, were the proper rulers of both public and private space. Labor was gendered in accordance with this divvying up of space. This is what feminist theorists call the sexual division of labor. Men in the 19th century were perceived as being tough enough to handle the rough and tumble world of the public sphere. The dirt and grime of industry, the dirty games of politics, the brutality of military service and war, even the high-order intelligence needed for white-collar jobs in banking, the law, and academia. Women, on the other hand, were relegated to the private sphere. If they were middle or upper-middle-class women, they were not supposed to work at all. Remember, their reproductive and emotional labor didn't count within this equation. A middle-class woman was to be treated as an angel in the house. Yet even her clothing was designed to be so constrictive that it repelled physical movement of any but the most delicate kind. She was both the ultimate ornament of the home and its caretaker. From this position, it was women's duty to both raise children in the values of the social body, to pass down traditions, and to bring her husband back to religion and to God. Women, especially mothers, were supposed to be nurses as well. Illness and death were very common during this period, and so women had a lot of experience nursing family members, even if their own health was not very robust. Interestingly, within this calling came room for women to gain knowledge about the body and about medicine. Quote, if you cultivate right views of the wonderful structure of the body, you will be as willing to speak to a physician of the bowels as the brains of your patient, advises Mrs. Farrar in a chapter of The Young Lady's Friend. Nursing sick males, especially important ones, could be a source of influence for women. Young girls and women were also to master music, embroidery, floral arrangement, and a whole host of domestic arts, in order to gain a suitable husband. Eloise from Bridgerton chafed against these pursuits, wanting to nurture her mind rather than her marriage prospect.
Oh, enough, I beg of you.
Well, perhaps you should join me. Well, you will need to be proficient on the pianoforte soon enough. Could use the practice, I'm sure.
On second thought, continue. You will frighten away the Duke, the Prince, and any other eligible suitor clear across the North Sea.
And you would wish that upon me, would you, sister?
To get Mamma's attentions focused on you instead of me, I might.
You can take your reading outside.
You say that as if reading were a bad thing.
I meant no such thing.
But it'll not gain me a husband, is that what you meant then?
Louise.
You wish to follow your heart, and I wish to nurture my mind. Let us leave it there.
Can you at least try to understand? You never see things from my perspective. You are not the only one with troubles, Eloise. You have no idea what it... Does not matter.
Exciting and dangerous books could cause disaster, leading a young girl away from the safety of her home and religion. If a woman wanted to be educated, she must show first that she is capable in the household. Working class and poor women were not given such gilded cages. They had to work to support their families, but their work was most often inside of homes where they toiled endlessly to create the illusion upon which genteel society was based. Women who questioned the cult of true womanhood, who showed themselves to have a little too much talent, or intellect, or verve, or refused to be content in their roles, were condemned and scorned. The great English writer and thinker, Mary Wollstonecraft, who we discussed at the beginning of the lecture, was called a semi-woman and a mental hermaphrodite. American women were very satisfied with their position in life, argued American men. They didn't desire a wider sphere of interest. American women responded to troubling women such as Wollstonecraft by saying, quote, let the men take care of the politics. We will take care of the children. Or at least these are the words male writers put in their mouths. After all, American women knew that they were the last stronghold of the social order.